Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when silence becomes louder than noise, when the world seems to move forward, and you're stuck frozen between what was and what could be. I know that moment, I've lived it, and maybe you have too. There was a time when I thought life was a straight path, neatly paved with plans and dreams. I thought strength meant walking tall, not falling. But life has a beautiful, brutal way of teaching us that sometimes the real strength is in learning how to crawl before we can rise. People often ask, how did you keep going when everything fell apart? And the truth is, I didn't. I broke, I shattered, and in those pieces I found something I never knew existed. The courage to begin again. You see, I can do it. Doesn't mean I have it all figured out. It doesn't mean I'm fearless or flawless. It means I've made peace with the storm inside me. It means I wake up each day, look at my scars, emotional, physical, invisible, and choose not to hide them but to honor them. Because these scars, these cracks, they are not weaknesses. They are the spaces where the light got in. To the one listening who feels like they're not enough, because of what happened to you, because of what they said to you, because of what you've lost, I want you to hear me today. You can do it. You can still dream, even if your heart has been broken. You can still rise, even if you've been on your knees for years. You can still matter, even if the world has tried to make you feel invisible. They told me you can't, and for a while I believed them, until one day I realized the only person who needed to believe in me was me. I can do it is not a loud declaration. It's a whisper you say to yourself in the dark. It's the voice that shows up even when hope doesn't. It's what keeps your soul breathing when everything else is gasping for air. So no, I don't have a fairy tale story, but I have something better, a story of falling, healing, rising, and choosing joy over and over again. To every soul listening today, if your dreams have been delayed, not denied, if your path is crooked, not closed, if your heart is heavy but still beating, then repeat after me. I can do it. I will do it. I am doing it, and that is more than enough. ChatGPT said, your scars are not your weakness. They are where the light got in. There was a time when I believed that strength meant perfection. That to be strong, I had to be untouched by pain, unmoved by emotion, and unaffected by failure. I thought if I covered my wounds, buried my hurts, and smiled wide enough, I would be okay. But life has a way of stripping away every mask, every illusion, until you are left with the raw truth of who you are. And in that moment when I stood there with nothing to hide behind, I saw myself clearly, not as broken but as becoming. Scars tell stories. They are not signs of defeat but symbols of survival. Every scar carries a memory, a moment when life could have ended but didn't. A moment when everything seemed lost, but somehow you held on. You endured the sleepless nights, the silent battles, the questions that never got answered, and yet you're still here, breathing, existing. Living, maybe not the same, maybe not unshaken, but stronger than you've ever been. The world teaches us to hide our scars, to edit them out of photos, to smile through our suffering, to pretend we've never been hurt. We're told to be flawless, to be whole, to be fine. But what if wholeness isn't about having no cracks? What if it's about embracing every one of them? What if our pain doesn't disqualify us from living fully, but invites us to live more deeply? When I first looked at my scars, I saw only damage. I saw something I wanted to erase, something I believed made me less worthy. But over time, I began to understand. They were not the end of my story, they were the turning point. Because the most beautiful things in life often grow out of the darkest soil. Just like a lotus that rises from the mud, our strength doesn't bloom in perfect conditions. It's forged in fire, shaped in silence, and softened by tears. Our scars teach us empathy. When you've suffered, you begin to recognize suffering in others. You stop judging people for their wounds because you've learned how much it hurts to carry your own. That kindness, that gentleness, that's not weakness. That's strength born from struggle. It's the strength that says, I know how hard it is, and I won't let you walk through this alone. There's a strange kind of beauty in scars. Not the beauty you see in magazines or on perfect screens, but the kind that lingers in someone's eyes when they've faced life and chosen to stay soft. The beauty of someone who's been cracked wide open, and instead of closing off, they became a vessel for light to pour through. That's what scars do. They let the light in. They teach you how to be vulnerable without being destroyed. They teach you how to stand even when you're shaking. Sometimes we wait until the pain is gone to start living again. We wait for the healing to feel complete before we allow joy back in. But healing is not a finish line. It's a journey. And the truth is, you can laugh with a broken heart. You can love with open wounds. You can shine even while you're still healing, because strength is not about having no pain. It's about choosing to live anyway. You are not broken because of what you've been through. You are breaking open, unfolding, evolving. Every scar on your body or soul is a reminder that something tried to defeat you, and failed. You endured, you learned, you grew, and now when you look back, you might see pain. But if you look closer, you'll also see light. The kind that only reveals itself when everything else is stripped away. We spend so much time wishing we could go back and change the past. We want to rewrite the pain, undo the damage, erase the moments that hurt the most. But without those moments, we would not be who we are today. Pain changes us, but not always in the way we fear. Sometimes it makes us softer, braver, kinder. Sometimes it teaches us how to see beauty in the most unexpected places. The truth is, the people who have been through the most are often the ones who love the deepest. They know what loss feels like. They know what it means to rebuild from nothing, and so they don't take anything for granted. Not love, not kindness, not a single morning they get to open their eyes. They live with a quiet intensity that says, I've seen the dark and I choose the light. So if you're carrying scars on your body, your heart, your soul, don't hide them, don't apologize for them, don't wish them away. They are not proof of your weakness, they are evidence of your strength. They are the chapters in your story where the plot thickens, where the character grows, where transformation begins. And most importantly, they are the places where the light got in. The places where you cracked open and let something bigger than pain come through. Hope, grace, resilience, love. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You don't have to be unhurt to be worthy. You only have to be real. You only have to be willing to stand in your truth, scars and all, and say, this is who I am, this is what I've been through, and still, I rise, I can do it, is not a loud declaration. It's a quiet promise you make to yourself. It often doesn't come when the world is cheering you on or when everything is going right. It doesn't show up in the spotlight, and it rarely sounds confident. Sometimes it's whispered in the silence of your room after a long day. Sometimes it's breathed out between sobs, spoken with trembling lips, or mouthed silently when words feel too heavy. It's that small voice inside you that refuses to be silenced, even when the world outside tells you otherwise. It is not always the voice of a confident person. It is not always the voice of someone who has all the answers. In fact, most of the time, it belongs to someone who is uncertain, afraid, and tired, but still, they speak it. Still, they believe, even if only a little, that they can take one more step forward, that one more try might change everything, that something inside them is still strong enough to carry them through. We often think of strength as something loud, a roar, a battle cry, a fist in the air, but sometimes strength is a whisper. It's quiet, it's private. It's the voice that speaks when no one else is listening. That voice that rises not from pride, but from purpose. Not from ego, but from endurance. It says, I've been through worse. I've made it this far. I can do this too. And this voice doesn't come from winning. It comes from surviving. It's forged in fire, shaped in setbacks, molded by failure. It appears in the stillness after you fall, when you're face down and no one is there to pick you up. It's born the moment you choose to get up anyway. That decision, quiet as it may be, is the most powerful promise you will ever make to yourself, because no one else can make it for you. No one else can carry your story, your sorrow, or your soul. That's your job. And when you say, I can do it, you're not saying you know the way. You're saying you'll keep walking anyway. Sometimes I can do it is saying yes to a challenge even when you feel unprepared. Sometimes it's walking into a room full of doubt and choosing to show up anyway. Sometimes it's looking in the mirror and daring to believe that the person staring back is enough. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. The world often waits for loud confidence, for polished answers, for perfection before approval, but that kind of confidence is performative, the real kind. The kind that changes you begins in quiet moments. It begins when no one is watching. It begins when your heart is breaking, but you choose to try again. It begins when fear is screaming, but you still decide to move forward. I can do it is not arrogant. It is not proud. It is sacred. It is the gentle voice of your soul remembering its strength. It is your spirit choosing to speak when your mind wants to give up. It is rooted in truth, not in what you've achieved, but in what you've endured. And this promise, this quiet vow, is often renewed every day. You don't say it once and never again. You say it over and over, each time you doubt yourself. Each time life throws another test. Each time you're tempted to quit. And with every repetition, that whisper becomes a little stronger. Until one day, it's not just a whisper. It's your way of living. People think bravery is loud, but the bravest people are often the quietest. They fight battles no one sees. They carry grief without applause. They push forward with no promise of reward. And still, they keep whispering, "I can do it." Not because they always believe it, but because they've learned that belief doesn't have to be big to be real. Even the smallest spark can light the dark. When you whisper, "I can do it," you reclaim your power. You remind yourself that your value isn't tied to outcomes, but to effort. That your worth isn't measured by perfection, but by persistence. That even when the world doubts you, even when you doubt you, that tiny whisper can still shift everything, because that promise becomes your anchor. Your mantra, your fuel. When everything feels uncertain, when failure knocks again, when dreams seem distant, you go back to it. You return to that sacred space inside where you first whispered those words. And somehow it helps you rise, not always boldly, sometimes shakily, but rise nonetheless. No one else needs to hear it. It's not for show, it's not for validation, it's for you and the quiet strength inside that refuses to give up. You and the resilience built from pain and progress. You and the history of everything you've already overcome. This promise doesn't depend on the size of your dream or the certainty of your path. It's not about proving anything to anyone else. It's about showing up for yourself again and again, even when the outcome is unknown, even when the risk is real, even when your voice shakes and your knees tremble, especially then. You see, the world may never understand the depth of what you carry. They may never see the sleepless nights, the buried fears, the invisible wounds, but you know, and still, you keep going. That's what makes the whisper so powerful. It's not loud because it doesn't need to be. It knows its strength, it trusts its roots, it holds steady when everything else is shaking. And maybe no one will notice the moment you whisper it. Maybe no one will see the battle you fight just to speak it. But you will, and every time you do, you grow, you rise, you heal, you move forward. Not because you have no fear, but because something deeper is guiding you, that quiet promise, that sacred truth. That simple, powerful whisper, "I can do it." You don't need to be fearless to begin, you just need to begin. We're often told that confidence is a prerequisite to action, that we must wait until we're ready, certain, prepared, unafraid. So we sit quietly while our dreams grow dusty on the shelves of our minds. We wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect version of ourselves. But what no one tells us is this: the beginning is always messy. It's filled with doubt, hesitation, discomfort, and uncertainty, and still it's necessary. Fear is not a sign that you're not ready. It's not a sign that you're weak. It's simply the body's way of alerting you to something new, something important. We treat fear like a wall, something to be avoided, but really it's a doorway. It's a signal that growth lives on the other side. So when your hands shake, when your heart races, when your voice trembles, that's not failure. That's the first spark of movement. That's how you know you're stepping into something bigger than what you've known. We're conditioned to see fear as the enemy. We think the brave have none of it, that those who succeed must have started with full belief in themselves. But the truth is, most people who have ever done anything worthwhile were afraid when they began. They didn't wait to become fearless. They simply moved forward despite the fear. They understood that fear is a companion, not a captor. It walks beside you, but it doesn't have to lead. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to keep walking with it. It is waking up every morning, hearing that small, anxious voice in your head, and choosing to take one step anyway. You don't need to silence the voice of fear. You only need to stop letting it make your choices. You can feel the fear and act anyway. You can shake and still stand. You can be uncertain and still move. So many of us wait for a moment that may never come. A moment where we feel completely confident, perfectly capable, entirely free of doubt. But that moment isn't real, because beginnings are supposed to feel shaky. You're stepping into unknown territory. You're trying something you've never done before. Of course it's uncomfortable. Of course it's overwhelming. That doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you're human. Starting small is still starting. A whisper is still a voice. A slow step is still progress. You don't need a grand gesture or a big breakthrough to begin. You only need willingness. You only need to say, "This matters enough for me to try." You don't need to see the whole path. You don't need a guarantee. All you need is the courage to take one uncertain step, and then another, and then another. Fear often disguises itself as logic. It will tell you you're not qualified, that others are doing it better, that the risk is too big, that failure is too painful. But behind all that noise is one simple truth. Beginnings are vulnerable. They expose you. They demand your trust, but they also shape you in ways comfort never could. They give you strength that hiding never will. They reveal who you are beneath the fear. You don't have to wait for everything to align. You don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, the most experienced. You just have to begin with what you have, where you are, as you are. Because beginnings aren't about proving yourself. They're about discovering what's possible when you stop letting fear dictate your life. The first time you speak up, it might feel like your voice will break. The first time you share your story, it might feel like no one will understand. The first time you show up for your dream, it might feel like the world is watching, waiting to judge. But that first time matters more than you think, not because it's perfect, but because it's real, because it's yours, because it's the beginning of everything. You won't always feel ready, but you can still be brave. Readiness is a myth. Most of the time, you become ready by doing the thing, not by waiting for the perfect conditions. The first step is always the hardest. The weight of what-ifs, of self-doubt, of fear, it's heavy. But the moment you move even a little, the weight starts to shift. You realize it wasn't as immovable as it seemed. You realize you're stronger than you thought. You don't need to be fearless to begin. You only need to trust that fear is not final, that discomfort is not danger, that hesitation is not weakness. You only need to believe, even if just for a moment, that something beautiful could exist on the other side of that fear. And that belief, however small, is enough to take the first step. There will always be reasons to wait. Always be voices that tell you it's too soon, too late, too hard. But what if you listen to the quiet voice instead? The one that whispers beneath the fear, "Try." What if you chose to believe that beginning isn't about being unafraid, but about being unwilling to let fear keep you stuck? People will see your progress one day and call it confidence. But they won't see the nights you were terrified, the mornings you wanted to quit, the thoughts you had to fight just to show up. But you will know, you will remember, and that's what makes the journey meaningful. Not how bold you felt, but how bold you chose to be, despite everything telling you to stop. You don't need to be a hero to begin. You don't need a title or a plan. You only need to choose movement over stagnation, hope over hesitation, curiosity over certainty. You only need to stop asking, "What if I fail?" and start wondering, "What if I fly?" Because the truth is, the only way to find out is to begin.